Hi, it's Ricky of Moshville Times here once again. Now, tonight I'm delighted to be joined by UK death metal band Profundis, and I've got the pleasure of having twin guitarists Shoi and Paul. So how are you two guys doing? How have you been through COVID? And I hope you've escaped all that nonsense. Everything been okay?
Yeah, I got COVID in September, but it was fairly mild. Yeah, it was okay. I said fairly mild. To be honest, I've still got some effects of it. I lost my sense of smell and taste, although it's mostly back now. I've got some weird, taste in my mouth. Like, for instance, I get a lot of like bleachy kind of taste on certain foods, especially foods I like. Like olives are quite rank now for me, which I used to love. But it's, every time I put an olive in my mouth, it tastes like bleach first.
I hate olives.
So it's a bit that's not great. So yeah, but I was double jabbed, so I'm glad I was double jabbed because I think it could have been a lot worse if I hadn't.
Yeah. So it's definitely not the rice cooking then.
No, it's.
Do you think she's trying to put bleach in it? Is that what it is? Bleach in your food?
Possible.
How about you, Paul? You all right, pal?
Yeah, I managed to, after 2 years of dodging the bloody thing a couple of weeks ago, it finally got me.
Yeah.
I'm amazed I lasted as long as I did because I'm just a deeply, deeply careless person. And a lot of my work, I work like indoors in large groups with like no windows. So yeah, like there was a phase where I was like wearing 2 face masks in one, which really, not really, bad idea. But yeah,
we know.
Well,
it was mild enough, and now I'm just back normal. That I had a dodgy sort of aftertasty thing for a while, but that's kind of gone. So
yeah, cool.
Good. Well, would not recommend, but still.
No. Well, listen, guys, we're not here to talk about COVID and all that stuff. But later this year, then you'll be releasing your 6th full album, called "The Corruption of Virtue," through Transcending Obscurity. So you must be chomping at the bit to get the music out there. But was there a possibility that album could have been released far before now? Is it just a case of everything was held up with COVID, or is this coming at the right time?
I think the original plan was, well, we were hoping that we could possibly actually have gotten it out in 2020. We were hoping that for once we would actually have like a timely release, but that went out the window with everything else.
Yeah. We basically we finished actually the last mix. I mean, this is the crazy bit. The last mix of day, last mixing day was last April. So we actually finished off mixing the album in April last year. And we've been sitting on it since. So I mean, you know what? It was a two-way thing. I mean, partly we're sitting on it because we didn't want to release it when there was nothing we could do. Regarding promoting it. I mean, even now it's just still not great in regards to touring, but we'll come to that probably later. But yeah, we've been sitting on it for a while now. I mean, there was, I think within the ranks, a bar cut, but you know, I think like Steve, for instance, was getting quite impatient because obviously it's his first output. You know, Steve, our new bass player, is his first output with the band, so he was very keen on getting it out so people could hear what he's done. Yeah. And finally, because, you know, if you think about it, we had this conversation with Aaron, like, you know, obviously we announced today that Aaron's left the band. Yeah. This was actually, this discussion I worked it out today was 2 years ago. So it was 2 years ago that we basically actually parted with Aaron and then Steve came in. So even though it's news for a lot of people out there, for us it's been something we've been living with for the last 2 years.
Well, it was actually a question I was going to ask for later on, so I'll ask it later on. But are the songs on this album then, is it everything since The Blinding Light of Faith? Are they brand new songs, or have you taken songs and riffs from like 2015 or something like that have been lying about? No, all brand new?
No.
All brand new, but I mean, things with me is I stockpile stuff, right? So like there is riffs which there is a riff on the first album I did with Profundis, the Kingdom of the Blinds. There's a track on there, A Strange Awakening, and I wrote the riff in 2000. The main riff I wrote in 2005, 2006. I was like 14 or 15, and I never found a place that really fit it until I joined D-Pro, and we had this tune, and I was like, oh, I have this one in the vaults, which I've just never had a place on. I'm trying to think if I think there's 1 or 2 points possibly in this record where I have some stuff like that, but it becomes a little bit of a blur, to be honest. Sometimes it's just like kind of vaguely remember something. I'm like, oh, I have this, and then I come back and I look at it, and it wasn't actually the same thing. So brand new with an asterisk attached.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we always tend to write for an album, so we don't tend to then whatever we've written, or we tend to write just the amount of songs we want for a particular album.
Yeah.
So yeah, if there are riffs, yeah, they could be always. I had a few probably riffs that were there for a while, but generally when we tend to write, it is with the optic that this is these are the songs that are going on the album, and that's we don't tend to keep things for later. There has been like Paul said, occasionally some riffs that we've struggled to fit in, and at some point we've come back to them. But generally speaking, so everything's pretty much new. Actually, on this album, it was quite interesting because we started writing early 2019. It was a very strange time because we did. I lost my mum in January 2019 very suddenly. Then we went literally 4 days later. We were on tour with Terrorizer, and we literally started writing this album a week or so after we came back from the Terrorizer tour because we were really just motivated to start writing again. Yes, and then between February 2019 to August 2019. We pretty much had written the whole album. So yeah, like I said,
July 2019 was. I remember, that was when we kind of had the blueprints of all the songs and all the riffs were there, and then we spent the next 6 months sort of like sculpting them into just going back, and rather than being in writing mode, being in editing mode, and then after that going through them again, but rather than being in editing mode, like rehearsing mode. So kind of giving the songs like several kind of rounds over of stuff and just fixing the stuff that we said we were going to come back to later and that sort of thing.
So was there ever a discussion that you're going to release, like, I don't know, like, was it always going to be an album? Did you ever think of doing like an EP, or are you guys always focused on the album? For a reviewer, I prefer albums because you've got a beginning, middle, and an end, and you've got a story to it. Whereas sometimes an EP, you might get 3 or 4 songs, you hear it, and it's absolutely brilliant. 15 minutes and that's it over with. But was there ever a discussion in the band, an EP or an album?
We don't rule out EPs. I mean, in fact, like we'll talk about our later live sets later on in the interview, I'm sure. But there is a track from our Singularity EP, from our Frequencies EP called Singularity, which we've never included on any album, but we love playing it. And same with an Orgy of Grotesqueries from the Decade compilation that we did. So we don't rule it out. And there's been times where we've kind of spitballed about kind of doing more with it. That being said, I do think that it's good having EPs with a certain theme or a certain sort of idea to give it a little bit more like you were saying. I mean, the first one that comes to mind for me, totally different kind of metal genre, but Super Coven, Electric Wizard, where it's an EP, but there is very much it's supposed to stand on its own. It's not meant to be a sampler of another thing.
Yeah.
So, but no, this was always supposed to be an album. Although, mind you, it is absolutely it's just because of the nature of the music, it is our shortest album. That's not to say it's lacking everything. It's just everything is faster than everything we've done before.
Yeah. Well, that was actually going to be my next question. For those that are new to the band, then, how would you say the Corruption of Virtue compares to the Blinding Light of Faith? And do you think you found the sound that you'd be looking for with this album then?
It's definitely it's a definitely continuation of the Blinding Light of Faith. I mean, I think we sort of hit on something with that album, and to be fair, we started hitting that stride with Kingdom of the Blind. Unfortunately, Kingdom of the Blind didn't go down the way we wanted for other reasons in terms of the label we were on and all that. But actually, if you go back to Kingdom of the Blind and the Frequencies EP, in some ways, I would say a song like Singularity on Frequencies is pretty much a blueprint for a lot of the stuff we've done after that. So I would say this album was definitely heavier, more brutal. To be, like I said, I was in a strange frame of mind. I mean, I lost my mum very suddenly in January 2019. And I think I had a burst of creativity that I've never had before, but everything that was coming out was just fast, brutal. It was just obviously the way my state of mind was in there. So I think that sort of permeates in the album a lot. And one of the things that we've been trying to do for a while is streamline the songwriting, because one of the things we realize is when you play live, you've to keep the people with you, especially when you're touring with bands like Terrorizer. and all that. You sort of want to keep the people sort of hooked on, and shorter songs, faster songs tend to do that. You've got to be careful with faster. We've also worked out that there is a danger with fast as well. There is that sort of sweet spot that we realize that actually if you stay within that sweet spot in terms of speed, people will be more into it. If you're going just over that, I think you tend to sort of lose people a little bit. So that's, and just an example, Craig, our singer, we went to see the Cavalera brothers doing the Arise and Beneath the Remains. Now, we're obviously a huge fan of that Sepultura era. And both me and Craig sat there watching that. Actually, if you listen to it, most of the songs are sitting in that sort of, that particular thrash beat and particular sort of BPM, beats per minute, that sort of really people get really crazy about. And it's just got that particular groove. So we really wanted to hit that as well with that, because I think, again, if you go too fast, it's, people, it just live, it just becomes a bit of a blur.
I totally agree with that. If it's an album, if it's a 30-minute album just full of blast beats from beginning to end, it loses interest for me. But Paul, is Shoi the type of guy then that would send you a riff at 4 o'clock in the morning saying, "This is the best riff I've ever written"? By the way, is that what he was trying to say there?
We have a really interesting thing with kind of riffs, because I think the kind of, in a lot of ways our styles are very similar, but there's certain nuances which kind of separate the things that we do, and I think it comes from several things, like coming from like slightly different generations of metal first of all, and then like just certain bands which particularly like stuck with one or particularly stuck with the other. So what we'll always find is for every album there'll be like a couple riffs which I will write that will just completely just like fuck with Shoi's head, and likewise there'll be a couple he does where I'm just like, what the hell is this? So actually more likely it's more likely that we'll get a message from the other one at 4 a.m. going, "You bastard, why did you write this?" And that's more how it goes, as opposed to aggrandizement. It's more anger.
There's a lot of anger that I do curse Paul a lot when I tend to record his riffs. I'm like, why? And the funniest thing about this as well is every time we finish an album, I remember when we finished The Blinding Light of Fate, Paul was like, "Right, no more. We're gonna not be as technical. We're gonna not be as fast. Can we not do all that? I just can't do it anymore." And then guess what? Next album we come back with I think the thing is you got to write what comes naturally to you.
Yeah.
And I think there is a natural sort of tendency, especially with the lineup, and you also write with the lineup that you have, right? So the lineup that we have is a lineup that wants, Tom started off when he first joined us in 2014. I always laugh at this conversation. When he's joined us in he actually, I don't know if Tom sort of decked for us on the Malevolent Creation tour, because our old drummer couldn't do that tour. And then we came back, and he hadn't played any metal for a while, actually. He'd stopped playing metal for a while, but he wanted to get back in. So we got him to do the gig, and he did really well. He learned all the songs in like a week, which was crazy. And after the tour, I kept pestering him. I said, "Mate, can you give me some names of drummers that you think could do the gig?" Because I didn't think he wanted to do it, because he wasn't doing into metal. And then he wasn't sending me anything. I said, "Dude, right, seriously, are you going to give me some names of drummers?" He goes, "Well, I don't really want to give you names because I'm actually interested to do it." I'm like, "Okay." But then he goes, "But here's the caveat," he tells me, "I don't want to just do blast beats all the time, and I don't want to just play fast all the time." He's the one now that always wants to do fast stuff. He's the one that's actually, we have to rein him back. We have to say, "Dude, seriously, this is too fast." So just cool it, man. There's so fast that Paul and I can go. So this is the funniest bit, is that he now wants to do all that stuff more than we do.
So as long as he's the drummer, then you're never going to write a Death Doom album.
Well, okay, so I think this is a big thing. So it's funny because I come from this as someone who was a fan of De Profundis who became a member, but I think that when I was joining was when, I'm sure Shoi would agree that, like, I think De Profundis was kind of in the crux of an identity crisis, where the music was gradually getting heavier and more like to what would be more akin to death metal, but we constantly had this like tag of like sort of progressive metal that would be compared to bands like Opeth or Bellacore, whereas the writing that we were going down was much closer to Pestilence or Atheist or Morbid Angel, and it would become very, very frustrating, because the problem is, one thing that I think is difficult now, which was easier before. If you take a band like The Cure, right? So if you think about the first like 2 or 3 The Cure albums, or the first 2 or 3 Pink Floyd albums, they became a very, very different band later on when they experienced success. And those early records kind of had a certain vibe. But those bands weren't forever associated with that early sound. If anything, they were more associated with what came later. But what we were finding, we were having the opposite, that we were, years away. We'd been having several like total death metal albums down our belt, and we'd be still being like, oh, for fans of, Insomnium, and who, they're great, but if someone expected that and listened to The Corruption of Virtue, they'd be deeply disappointed. So I think with The Blinding Light of Faith, we had finally managed to actually kind of hammer the point home that this is the kind of band that we are. And so with this one, I think there was... I don't think we felt the need to prove a point anymore, because despite the fact that a lot of it is very fast, I remember there was phases before where we'd be like a bit anxious about writing slower material because we didn't want what we call the D word, as in to be called a doom metal band or anything. And this time round, it just felt like, no, we can just do what we want now. We've made our point, and that was a really, really refreshing thing about this album.
Cool. Well, I certainly remember writing in my review for Moshville Times that the Blinding Light of Faith will put De Profundis at the forefront of the UK extreme metal scene. So let's see what this new album can bring to the table. I'm very much excited to hear it. But yeah, we kind of touched on this a wee minute ago there. I just also noticed that you've got a new bass player in Steve Woodcock. So I take it then, you just mentioned that it was a discussion that you had 2 years ago, so I take it he was able to contribute to the album then? Or were the bass lines pretty much the majority of it was already written?
No, so the way this went down, I mean, we released obviously a press release today because we thought now that the video is out, I think questions are getting asked like, has Aaron cut his hair off, or that's not Aaron on the video. So we basically, what had happened is Aaron had obviously was very busy, obviously with Vervum, which is a very successful band as well. And then he was also doing Vipassi with the guy from the drummer of Neo Obliviscaris. So he had a lot of things going on. He had a lot of things going on in his personal life, nothing sort of crazy, just his wife is Spanish, so they were traveling back and forth between the UK and all that. So it was all, he was all over the place a little bit, Aaron. And there was also within the band, and gradually we could see that the 4 of us, Tom, Craig, Paul, and I, we were shifting really into sort of what we call the death metal sort of era, and quite entrenched in that. And by death metal, again, I mean, death metal is huge, right? But we really, if you actually, Blinding Light of Fate is really, in a lot of ways, an old school death metal album.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, it's obviously a bit more technical, but it is still very much in essence that. And there were already issues already at that point with Aaron that, it was the type of, the way he was playing, was it really suiting to what we were trying to do? And bizarrely, actually, Aaron himself pointed it out to us. He said, guys, I'm sometimes concerned that my playing might be turning potentially people off from DP because of the way I play. It does put us into this progressive territory that maybe is not necessarily what we want, what DP wants. So then he started, so we had a big discussion, and so we said, look, is it, maybe it's time to part ways? And he was fine. And like just to really clarify, I speak to Aaron literally on a weekly basis.
Yeah,
we speak to each other, so there's really it really was more of a professional decision. And the good thing was Steve has depth for Aaron since 2009. He's played a number of shows with us. Actually, the 100th show of DP in London, when we did our 100th show, which was in 2013, that was actually Steve who played that because Aaron couldn't do it. He had something else on. So Steve is the only bass player we could think of that would be able to do it.
I bet you still made him audition, though.
Sorry?
I bet you still made him audition, though.
No. And the other thing we told him straight away, we said to him, Steve, there's no bass lines as such because Aaron hadn't had time to write anything. It's your baby. You go and write. And I think he was quite surprised by that. That shocked him a little bit because he expected us to tell him you're going to have to play Aaron's line. We said, no, actually, you're writing everything. And he was like, oh, okay, all right. Yeah. So that's a bit of a different proposition, which actually got him quite excited. And we gave him literally carte blanche on the whole thing.
I think Aaron, was he not a 5 or a 6 string bass player? Is Steve the same, or is he a more traditional 4 string?
He's playing on 5-string, isn't he, Paul? Or is it 4? I'm not sure.
I got you.
Notice.
You should do your prep, you know.
Yeah, we should.
I'm pretty sure it's a 6. Oh, he's not gonna be happy when he sees this, is he?
Oh, he's gonna be so pissed off with us.
I'm pretty certain it's a 6.
He plays fretless. I can tell you he plays fretless.
Don't worry, I'll edit it out.
I can tell you he plays fretless. No, but the thing is, one of the things to be really mindful. One thing about Steve, and this is probably where I would say there's the difference between Steve and Aaron. I think a little bit what Paul mentioned earlier. There's a generational difference as well. So Steve is closer to my age. We're pretty much the same age. So Steve grew up listening to a lot of the stuff that Craig and I have grown up listening to. So we're really talking the sort of early 90s, actually probably even more. Both of them were really entrenched in the sort of old school death metal stuff. So and Steve very much in the thrash metal scene as well. So there was really sort of that sort of Steve knew exactly what kind of sound we were aiming for. We told him that this is where for instance with Aaron, especially now the reference points were not as common anymore, because I don't think Aaron as such had listened to that much earlier death metal. Like Paul, even though he's a lot younger than us, he has, and I think Paul in some ways is a bit of an exception like that, because that he has listened to so much of that kind of old stuff as well, and I think that helps with the writing. But with Aaron, I think that was the issue, is that the reference points were always a little bit different. If we said to Aaron, look, let's just do something that sounds a bit like Morbid Angel. He wasn't a huge fan of Morbid Angel, so he wouldn't really know, what we're talking about in terms of the vibe and all that. So I think that's the one thing that with Steve worked, because he knew exactly what we were looking for sonically, and also from a playing perspective, what were we looking for, and you'll hear it on this album that the bass is huge. And the nice thing is the first few comments we've had on the video is about the bass. So, which is cool. Steve is very happy about that. So
yeah, I mean, a big part of the reason why we didn't announce sooner was for no disrespect to Aaron whatsoever. It was that Aaron leaving. Aaron is a very prolific bass player, and a big, I think one big thing that why kind of on a musical level it wasn't really working anymore is because he was moving on to frankly much bigger things. Like he'd been playing with the band Vervum, who he recorded bass for their album originally, and then they really, really exploded, and he was really getting very kind of into that sort of. See, we are a death metal band that happens to have some technical sections, but I completely reject the idea that we're a tech death band. We're not. We are much closer to a traditional death metal band played in a certain way. We are a lot more Hate Eternal than we are Obscura. And Aaron's really, really carved out this incredible niche in the more kind of tech scene. If you speak to anyone who's really into that style, they will know who Aaron Max Boren is, and that's freaking awesome. And as a result, we did think that, well, frankly, we did think that when we were announcing that Aaron was leaving, that people would go, "Oh, they're fucked, aren't they?" But Steve is an incredible bass player who has had just an amazing sort of track record. And what we didn't want is 2 years to go by, so to be like, okay, yeah, Aaron's out, Steve's in, and then have 2 years to go by where we have nothing to show for it. That I think would have sucked for. Well, sure. I think that would have sucked for everybody involved.
Just before I came on the interview, I saw a post by Aaron, because Aaron posted the press release as well, and somebody had made a comment. Our good old friend Andy Walmsley made a comment about, well, he's got less hair than you though, and Aaron's comment was, well, he doesn't need hair when he can go on stage, play Chapman Stick for Cynic. He doesn't need any hair. Because Aaron's a big fan of. So the thing to actually also remember, both of them are really good friends as well. Yeah, they're both like fans of each other as well. So so it really was. I mean, as soon as we mentioned it, Aaron looked at when we talked about, do we go our separate ways? Aaron said, well, you've got to get Steve, and Steve is the man. You've got to get him, because he's the only one I can think that can do justice to all this. And there you go. So it's all very adult. Nothing. It's not very juicy, is it?
Well, I was just about to say, I'm glad that there's no any animosity and stuff like that, and we're all still friends, So I'm glad it wasn't a Guns N' Roses type situation. But
sorry to interrupt, but one very last thing I would say about the bass situation, which I think just shows how well Steve has fitted in fitted in with us is that because of Aaron's being a very, very busy boy and not being around as much for the writing sessions, there was a phase where we were really, really kind of considering like, what is the role of bass in this new era of De Profundis? Are we actually going to go for a more traditional sort of approach to like a metal bass guitar at a time? There was I think it was purely spitballing, but there was a phase where we were like, are we going to go full Tom Araya, or are we going to have like a dude with a 4-string and a pick singing root notes? We really didn't know what was going to come next.
Yeah.
But then we didn't think that in the music that we had written, there had been as much space for that kind of very very forward-thinking approach to bass that people like Aaron and Steve both do. And so the fact that Steve came in and found all these spaces to do so much cool stuff that we honestly had no clue there was space for, just is testament to just how good he is, and B, how fitting he is for what we are, because I feel it's a continuation of what we had before, but slightly more fitting the new sound.
Cool. Well, look after him then. Look after him, that's all I'll say. What was I going to say? Yes, the last 18 months to 2 years then, with everything that's happened, not being able to gig and all the rest of it, did it make you look at the more business side of the band, like keeping the name of De Profundis out there, like keep on releasing new merch and maybe take on roles that you hadn't done previously but now have to do?
Not really. I actually I took a complete step back from the whole thing. No. To be fair, I started really working more on my own playing. To be actually, in fairness, when the first lockdown happened, we were actually busy finishing recording the album. Like I remember still today, Paul finished his rhythm guitar parts the night before the actual lockdown was about to start. I remember he was quite jittery and said, I need to finish this today. So he was here at the studio finishing up, and I dropped him off. And I remember our parting words, well, mate, I hope to see you at some point again, because it was like, God knows what's going to happen now, because we've never lived this. And then after that, it was, we had a few weeks, I think we all just lost motivation. Then gradually we got back into it. We only had the solos to do. Then Steve took a while to do his bass. He had an excuse. Craig took a while to finish his lyrics. So actually, to be honest, that first year of the lockdown, so the end of 2020, we were quite busy actually finishing things off. But when it came to the business side, I'll be honest with you, in fairness, I'd actually already started switching off. I've been doing this for a long time, man. And I'll be honest, the business side of it just fucks me off so much. I just understand. If I didn't have to do it anymore at all, I just wouldn't do it. It just, I've done it for 15 years. I've been the sort of, what we call it. I've been the sort of the receiver of bad news all the time. Because, to be fair, the reality is when you're in a band, you 99% of the time you receive bad news rather than good news. And there's so much you can take. After a while, you just, you know what, I don't want to be doing this anymore. And it's sort of, Paul's got a very good word for this. It's not really related to business side, but regarding bad gigs as well. You shouldn't be doing something where you're literally thinking about retiring on the way home. That's the way I started feeling about the business side. Because one of the things that, I felt, especially after the blinding light of faith, when we saw, and, this is not about being arrogant, but after so many years of doing this, we saw what we, the amount of sort of success we got in terms of people like yourself that praised us. And like you said, you put us at the forefront of extreme metal in the UK. We got a lot of praise, but there's still so many other bits in the business that just don't seem to take it. And it's just like, after a while, you feel, I don't really have to prove myself anymore. Been here long enough. I'm not a beginner, so I just switched off from the business. I have taken it back on now a little bit, but I'm gonna do it very, very sporadically, not sort of to that kind of, not to the kind of what's it called? I used to be very much on it all the time. I just don't want to do it.
Cool.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm exactly the same. In fact, I think that COVID has led to a sort of a reevaluation of my balance of my music career in my life that I don't think I've completely I don't think I've completely concluded yet, because it is like my entire adult life I've been playing in bands, and it's been like publicly like the biggest thing that I do, right? It's been the thing that I talk about like all the time, just of like being on social media obsessively, plugging whatever it is I'm doing, whatever record comes out, whatever gig I'm playing, all that kind of stuff. And as scary as the whole lockdown thing was at first, one thing that eventually kind of I sort of embraced was it allowed me, because I couldn't, so it allowed me not to think of that anymore. And in a lot of ways, that has actually been really liberating. It's been like I like not feeling pressured to, okay, this morning we've got to announce this. I got to jump on social media, I post this, share it on a bunch of like groups called Death Metal for Life, brother, or whatever. Like it's liberating just being able to kind of have a little bit of a balance. And I'm not saying that means I'm going to be stepping away from it the way that I was before. Not at all. But it's just kind of the last 2 years where this hasn't been as present as before. Life's kind of moved around in a way where it's still kind of finding where one goes and where I can do the best for both of them, right? Like. Yeah. I remember when I started playing live again. I mean, the first gig. I mean, and the first gig that I did back after lockdown wasn't a Profundis gig. It was with my other band, my now dearly departed Formicarius. And I remember after about half an hour of playing, I was like, "Fuck! I have not done this in a long time," because I was on the verge of just full on passing out. I didn't have like to something which I had been doing like for so long, for so regularly, just playing and putting my all into a show for like 45 minutes to an hour, and I was really, really struggling to do that because it was like my body hadn't done that particular thing for ages. And then little things like just I used to be really I got myself very efficient. I'd be like, okay, here's my gear, get it on stage, get it off stage. I could like do that almost like military like. I could do it in 10 seconds flat. And I hadn't had to do that for 2 years, and I still have like a pile of gear which needs servicing and needs sorting because I'm slowly kind of getting back into doing this for real again. So long story short, no. I mean, I'm doing a bit more playing stuff, but then I sort of embraced just being able to not do this, to embrace being able to just read or just do other or focus on my other sides to my work or just other weird stuff.
Yeah.
I've actually practiced like crazy these last 2 years. It's been my second sort of, you always have this burst of where you practice and improve on, and because I started doing a lot of those videos on my YouTube page, I developed that side a lot of my activity. It was partly because I wanted to get better at playing certain things, so I just spent a lot of times doing that. So I have seen my playing level in the last 2 years go up a lot. But yeah, from a business side, I have kept in touch with people. I haven't completely gone off radar. But,
yeah.
I'll be honest with you. It's bizarrely, it wasn't actually the pandemic. It was some events that happened before the pandemic. One of the last tours I did with my other band, Monument of Misanthropy, that had really started switching me off the business side a little bit. But that's a different story. Anyway.
But just an idea that I've talked about with a couple of other bands. Did you think about doing like a virtual gig or like a gig in your rehearsal space and stuff like that, and just stream it live so you're keeping the name of De Profundis out there? Was that ever raised?
I don't know. I think that was one of these things that like we did our own sort of things in our own sort of like worlds. Like I did like Shoi and I both did like some video content, including some like De Profundis stuff. Like I did some live streaming of like some musical kind of content, but not necessarily. I mean, we were just kind of indoors. We didn't really do any of that. I mean, and to be honest, around that time where everyone was just indoors, the first like big lockdown, we were finishing the album. Yeah. And the second big lockdown, we were sorting out the mixing and mastering around that time. So every time that everyone, as opposed to like, later on when the summer months came in and people were, having socially distanced piss ups in the park, where there was less that. The times where everyone actually was indoors, we were actually busy. Terrible timing, really, when you think about it.
That's why, because we were quite busy with the album. We were, I mean, like I said, we finished it about a year ago. But then, then it was sort of more, well, we need to start, getting back into rehearsal, which we did because we played a show in November. So that got us back into rehearsing, which was good. And the show in November was fantastic. That was actually probably one of our best shows, actually. Like,
the best, pretty much the best comeback we could ask for, to be honest.
And remember, we obviously had to get Steve to sort of practice the old stuff as well. So we did have to sort of blend him into the sound as well. So we didn't really do that. Actually, to be honest, I took this opportunity to do covers with people that I never thought I would. So ending up doing covers with Kevin Parody from Benighted, things that I didn't think would happen, and suddenly, so I took that opportunity to do that, which was cool, which is a bit different.
Well, that's it. I've taken this opportunity to do this, so in a way, COVID's been a good thing. So yeah, please do keep it going, keep it. That's brilliant. Thanks very much for that, guys. With the recording of The Corruption of Virtue, was there anything that you did differently with this release than that of The Blinding Light of Faith? And what would you say you learned most from this recording?
I think the biggest thing is a lot more of it was, for obvious reasons, recorded at home. Like a lot more of it was recorded either together or at least, slightly more in a traditional sort of feature. I mean, before lockdown, the only thing that actually was completely recorded was all the drums and all the rhythm guitars.
Yeah.
So Craig recorded his vocals in our producer Pete's studio, but all the bass was done by Steve at Steve's, and then all the lead guitars were done by Shoi and myself in our own respective houses, basically. So yeah, it's much more it's a testament to the wonders of the modern studio environment, I suppose, where you can release industry standard music from your own home as long as you have a semi-decent laptop and a good DAW.
So, Shoi, do you see that as a practice that you guys are going to continue?
Yeah, to be honest, on The Blinding Light of Faith is where Paul and I really learned a lot about recording guitars. So we took that into The Corruption of Virtue, and in some ways, actually, it was fairly easy to get back into it, to do it. So yeah, I mean, we are considering potentially, because our producer Pete, he's moving away a little bit from production work. I think he burnt out on doing it, not just us, but just generally. I think he did a lot of production work, so he's moving on to different things. So probably for the next album, we will be moving to a sort of different way of doing things. But one of the things that we have discussed is potentially whether, because you can see I've got the setup here, whether to potentially record even more here, maybe do the drums here, but that's something to look into. One of the major change for recording this time, or at least from a guitar point of view, which I don't think we're going to do again. I don't know what came over me, but I suggested we double track all the guitar solos, which was which was a bit stupid and a bit weird, but it works. But it's so much work, and sometimes maybe we realize maybe unnecessary. But you know what? I'd be honest with you. One thing we both Paul and I can say, we're much tighter now, because having to double track your guitar solos really makes you very tight. So I think that's one thing that and also obviously in the last year I've been doing a lot of production work, because all these videos I've been doing with other musicians and all that, a lot of them I actually mix them and all that. And funny enough, today I sent Paul a track of an online collab I've just done. And Paul's reaction was, shit, I thought it's an Anthrax tune. And Paul said, shit, I thought this was actually Anthrax. And I just and so, so I have been doing a lot of that kind of work. So we'll see where we go with the next one.
Yeah.
It's probably too early. We haven't even written a single note yet. But yeah, we definitely, I mean, the thing is, I'll be honest with you, because of the generation I'm from, there is a part of me that always feels I'd love to go away for 2-3 weeks and just record an album somewhere, away from everything, just focus on that and literally live and breathe the album for 2-3 weeks. But the thing is, look, the fact is that, not many bands today can afford to do that. The reality is that there really aren't that many bands that can afford to do that, unless you are signed on a big label that's going to sort of give you enough money to do that, enough cash to do that. The reality is that we all have to work like this now. And that's fine. You know, it is what it is. You know, I mean, you get some great results.
That's it. Thanks for that. So, with Craig being the vocalist of the band, then does he write all the lyrics for the songs, or is he more open and welcoming to contributions from the rest of the band?
Open and welcoming are not adjectives I would apply to Craig. No, but to be fair, I don't think any of us are exactly in a rush to unleash our inner Lord Byrons. Craig handles the lyrics, and I'm quite happy with that. I have no intentions of getting involved in that realm whatsoever.
To be fair, I can see why. Like, if he's writing the lyrics, then he's also already visualizing how he's going to sing them. So it might be quite difficult interpreting that if, like, say, if Shoi wrote the lyrics to a song or something like that, how you want him to sing it. So
yeah. One thing about Craig, which is quite fascinating, I find it. Craig will always be the first one to say, "I have no musical knowledge," in terms of he doesn't understand. Like if we're talking about musical things, like, you know, we're gonna play this scale and all that, or even like things like beats and all this kind of, he doesn't. But what Craig has is an incredible set of ears. He will hear things arrangement wise that none of us would hear. Like it'll be simple little things. He said, "Why don't you play that riff before that one?" And then change that riff around. And one of the reason he thinks about that is because he knows exactly where the vocals are going to go and how much he wants to do vocal wise. And also, unlike a lot of vocalists, he actually doesn't like he really hates, like one of his gripe, for instance, with the band like D-Side. He always says, "Why does Glenn Benton has to sing on every single riff all the time? You know, like, you need to let the music breathe a little bit." And Craig's always saying that, "I don't want to be singing on everything at all." You know, it's, you know, because otherwise it's just like, you know, you can't hear the guitars, and he always wants to hear big guitars and all that. So he's very good at that, and he's very good at knowing exactly, like, you know, this is where the vocals are gonna go, and, you know, and he's very quick in the studio. I'll be honest with you. I mean, he takes at a push a day and a half to get all his vocals done. He is very, very quick at getting it, and that includes like double tracking some of them and all that. One thing I did push him a bit more on this one, because I was there when he was doing his vocals. I did push the double tracking of the vocals, so I was pushing him to do like the highs and lows a bit more, because I think it really, especially on certain parts, on certain words, it really comes out a lot more. He wasn't too keen on doing that, but then when he heard it, yeah, actually that sounds pretty cool. So no, he's very good at that. He's very good at, you know, to be honest, I think one of the main roles of Craig, beside the vocals, is actually the arrangement work. A lot of arranging work is Craig. You know, Paul and I tend to, you know, I guess sometimes these days tend to come more with a map of a song, like where he wants to go. Paul generally has lots of great riffs that he'll be like, "Oh, I'm not sure where this one goes," like, you know, and then Craig will usually, and especially with Paul's ideas, I've noticed Craig is very good at sort of shaping them, like that one goes there, that one goes there, and then gradually sort of build them up there. Yeah. So I think his role is beyond just writing the lyrics and doing vocals. He actually, he's
an integral member of the band.
He's an integral. I know he hates it when I say that, but I always call him a bit like the Lars Ulrich of the Profundis. That's what Lars Ulrich's job is in Metallica as well. People say, "Oh, he's a crap drummer," which I don't think he is, by the way. I actually don't mind Lars as a drummer, but his job is to arrange a lot of the songs. A lot of the songs wouldn't sound the way they do if Lars hadn't arranged them that way.
One thing about Craig's involvement in the songwriting process, which is extremely frustrating but ultimately very handy, is that he is completely he has all the subtlety of basically a bull in a china shop. But that doesn't even do it justice. He is very much, if he doesn't like something, anyone in the nearest 50 square miles will know. And I think my favorite example of this is, there was a riff I brought in at one point. And I was like, okay, I've got the first half of this riff kind of down. I'm a bit unsure about the second half. I'm kind of spitballing here, but I'm going to play it anyway. Here you go. And I played it. And then I remember it's like, okay, yeah, you need to change that second half. And you need to change that first half as well. It's dog shit.
I think it is quite funny, because obviously I've been playing with Craig for many years now, for like 16 years or whatever. So I'm quite used to it. So I sort of, you know, but it's quite funny, like when Paul first arrived, and now it's quite funny because, you know, Paul also knows what's presentable and what isn't presentable. But the frustrating bit, and Tom always says this, Tom, our drummer, he says that, you know, the problem is that you want him to be wrong, but pretty much every time he's right. He's like, you know, because one thing about Craig is that he's got an encyclopedic knowledge of, you know, of extreme metal. He really does. Like, you know, he really has listened to so much of it, you know, for so long, like much more than any of us. And not just because all of us, what we've done is we've listened to, like, Paul's probably the second one in that's done a lot of that, but Craig has just listened to everything out there. He's, you know, he's been in sort of, you know, he's been sharing CDs on whatever that site he goes to, Discog and all that. He's been doing that for a long, long time. So he really has an ear for stuff. Like, he knows that should sound like this and that, you know. So I think that really, really helps. You know, his input is quite invaluable in that way.
You seem to have a lot of talented musicians within the band. What happened to you two?
Well, we're busy doing the business stuff, so you know that's we're the ones doing all this sort of thing, right? So,
so you've been signed to Transcending Obscurity. Is this your second album with Transcending? Yeah. How's the relationship been so far with Transcending Obscurity then, and what do you hope that they'll do for you?
I mean, we've literally seen. I mean, Kunal, the owner, we know him pretty well. We've actually known him before he even had Transcending. I mean, we've just seen this guy, you know, literally grow.
Where does he find these bands from, man?
I mean, the man is just incredible. It's crazy what he's done. And let me put it this way, and I think he even knows that. When we signed with him now for the Blinding Light of Faith, I had massive reservations, like huge reservations, you know, because, you know, and I think most bands have. And it's funny because we've had bands coming to us asking us, oh, is it to be signed, you know, because they've approached or they want to approach him. I said, guys, you're signing on to somebody who's really, really, really got his head screwed on, knows what he's doing. And I remember at the time of the Blinding Light of Faith when we were going to sign with them. And one of the reasons I was a little skeptical is because what had happened on the Kingdom of the Blind release with the Wicker Man releasing that one. I was quite sort of at that point very worried about labels not doing. It was our first experience with Wicker Man of a label really not doing what they needed to do. So I was a bit worried. I said, oh, he's based in India and, you know, what's he going to do? And I remember we used to work with Imperative at the time, and Paul Carter and Chris Key said, look, why don't you speak to some of the guys that he signed? And at the time he had one of Dave Ingram's band, I think, I can't remember which one of his bands.
Paganizer.
He had Paganizer. Was he in Paganizer, Dave Ingram?
I think it was. I'm pretty sure.
Well, we spoke both to him and to Roga as well. And both said, dude, Dave said, look, this is the best guy I've worked with in all my years in the business, which was, wow, okay. So, and honestly, since then, I did not expect that this was where he would be after a few years. I honestly did not expect that. I didn't expect that he'd have so many bands that would be coming out, and literally, like, you know, like a few years ago, I used to see that happening with what's the other label that he mirrored a little bit the business plan, the other label that
Dark Descent?
Yeah, Dark Descent. He pretty much mirrored a little bit what Dark Descent had done, right? You know, so and I was saying that to an interview the other day, one of the things that he's done in an old school way, that he's created a platform with fans buying into all the bands that he's got. So it's not just that you're sort of signing one band, but he's signing genres of bands. So what happens is all those fans will congregate and listen to that. So as soon as you've got one band releasing something, then you've got another band that's releasing something similar that you know you're going to be selling, because people are just buying TO stuff. They're not buying necessarily just the band. They're buying Transcending Obscurity stuff. And I think that's quite unique in this day and age to do that.
Yeah.
And I know Dark Descent did it for a good period of time as well. But he's taking it to another level. So it is insane what he's done. I think what I'd like, see, this is when it comes to the business side that annoys me. And clearly he's creating a huge stable of bands and some really quality bands, but I'm not seeing like the other sides of the business, like festivals and tour to booking agencies, really coming on to Transcending Obscurity and said, which bands do you have that we can start pushing in? And see, that's a bit annoying, because it's like, well, actually there are so many bands that he's got that could be doing lots of stuff, and you should be pushing those bands, you know, because these are bands that are proven. They've released something on effectively a pretty big label now.
Yeah.
But you know, it's just a lot of the business side still looks at the old Nuclear Blast, you know, the sort of those sort of top tier labels, and that's all they'll look at. Century Media and all that. That's all they still look at, and it's crazy because these bands are doing, you know, really, really well.
Agreed. Agreed.
And I think one thing with labels now as well, I mean, the way that I see it, Transcending Obscurity does what we are completely incapable of. And that's really, when it comes to it, that's what I want from a label, to do the stuff that I can't do. So just, Kunal knows how to promote stuff. He knows how to sell it. He knows how to, in this modern day and age, like, if you ask me, I will post on my social media things, and my echo chamber will get the same things I'm always pushing them. But he knows how to actually get things beyond, and how to connect with this metal scene that I am sometimes out of touch with. So it's great having that, and just someone with that understanding of how to do that. And really, I remember, like, because I mean, we were really down in the dumps with Kingdom of the Blind, and I think there was a certain sort of aura where, like, if Blinding Light of Faith absolutely, like, bombed, that probably would have been it for us. And then, but Kunal completely sort of rejuvenated that. And it's amazing when you think, of a record label in the extreme metal genre. You're like, okay, so which part of Germany do they come from? But no, like, he's coming from completely the other side of the planet, and actually carving out this incredible niche, and being able to stand up to this, to all these labels. And frankly, I think that I wish that a lot of the bands that Nuclear Blast were picking up were half as ambitious as the bands which Transcending Obscurity are taking on. They might have a little bit more, production sheen, but there's more to it than that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Even the quality is very reasonably priced for the CDs, but the quality of the CD packaging as well is just immense. It's very reliable. So yeah, I think. I mean, there's so many bands that I found recently, like Crypts of Despair from Lithuania, for example. Absolutely incredible. Love them. But and things that he does with his label sampler, I mean, that's 36 bands, and probably 30 of them you never heard of before.
Like I was delighted they signed Aton, who are a London sort of death metal band who we're friends of, and we were so happy for them. One of the bands that really and they have Live Burial as well. One of our best sort of like old school death metal style bands. And I was recently listening to the Et Morima album. And I was like, this is incredible. It's not even a style of like metal I'll listen to very often, but I was like, damn, this is people need to hear this. And so it's certainly we definitely feel like we're in a good place for that, and it's a good relationship, and we're quite happy where it is.
Cool. Thank you very much for that, guys. I've only got a few questions left. I really appreciate the time that you've taken out to do this. But I noticed that you released a video for religious cancer. Can I just say that I've been playing that on the radio for the last month on my radio show on a Thursday night? So where did you do the video? Who done the video for you? And do you see a couple more videos coming to promote the album over time?
Well, actually, Ricky, I wanted to say something to you. I wanted to say thank you, because I have noticed that you've been plugging us a lot, and we really, really appreciate it. As an underground, it's nice when we see that, like yourself, you've been doing it for a number of years now, and we have a few people like that. We need more, basically, people like doing that, what you're doing. But it's been really appreciated that you've been
thank you
doing that. I also want to say one of the reasons we held out a little bit, like I didn't sort of promote too much that you were pushing that particular song, is because we wanted the video to come out. So I didn't want to burn out that song before the videos even come out. So the video was done by Phil Berridge, directed by Phil Berridge, who actually directed our first video we did for Twisted Landscapes back in 2012. And we've, over the years, I mean, we did another video for All Consuming, but he wasn't involved in that. And we always wanted to go back to Phil, because I always enjoyed working with him. And we just rekindled last year. I just messaged him and said, look, man, are you still, because I haven't seen you doing many videos. But back in the day, he'd done videos for like, had he done one for Abysmal? Not what's it called? What's
Ingested, wasn't it, or Aborted?
Ingested? No, Bloodshot Dawn. He'd done Bloodshot Dawn, I think, right?
Okay, yeah, I think so.
Bloodshot Dawn, I think back in like 2013 or something. Anyway, he said he'd moved on to advertising work, like video for advertising. But he said, you know what, you guys asking me, I definitely would do it. So we went up to, where was it that we went? Was it not Peterborough, right? That's where he lived.
Peterborough, yeah.
Yeah, so we were there.
It was in like an old army base.
An old army base, yeah. And again, one of the things about DP that we're always very keen on this is whoever we take to work on certain thing, whether it's a video, whether it's the label, whether it's the bass player, we really are big believers that we give you're the expert in that subject. You come up with the idea, you tell us what you want to do. We don't like, pushing like, we want this, we want that, unless we've got a really big idea we want to get through. But generally speaking, I'm a big believer, and I think the rest of us are, that if we've taken somebody to do the video, it's his baby. We'll work for him in the sense. So we said to Phil, these are the lyrics. This is the song. You just think out what you want to do. You just tell us, and we'll turn up and we'll do the video. And that's exactly what he did. We just ran with it. I think the only stipulation, I think particularly Paul was very keen on this. Paul wanted to reduce the amount of performance side of the band because this is just too many of those kind of videos out there of metal bands playing, and he just thought it was looking a bit cheesy. He wanted more of the narrative. I said that's fine. We can adapt that. But yeah, so that, and we're very pleased with it. I think that's a great video.
I think for me, the fact of the matter is, I don't like music videos. That's what it comes to. I don't enjoy it as an art form. I understand the need for them to exist, but I'm not into it, and that's why I really like this video. Because for me, if there's a video that I like, it's like, oh well. Now, it takes more for me to be impressed by it, and Phil was incredible. Like it felt like, even though it's technically like our band's video, there was a point where it felt like I need because I was delegated to kind of pass along a lot of like kind of our thoughts about the storyboards and all that. But there was a point where I was feeling like, I feel like I need to be more involved in this because this guy is just he's got such a great idea, and I felt bad like he was doing all the legwork, but it's just because he was so damn good at it. And same with everyone involved. It's like Sean of Loki Films, who did the filming, Amy, the model, who is the like possessed nun throughout, and then we had our good friend Lauren, who came along with us and was doing a lot of just assisting with practically anything that needed to involve a lot of the sort of the Evil Dead style chains flying around in the background. And just out of shot is us and her like doing a bit of like a tug of war with these massive heavy chains. One of the things that was very Spinal Tap moment here that I had, because we had to source, obviously due to the thematic nature of the video, we needed to source a religious text. So I went out to my local area in North London, going into raiding the charity shops, and I went to an Oxfam bookstore, and poor Canadian lady working there just went through. I was like, I need a leather-bound book. I need a religious text. I'll take a Bible. I'll take a Quran. Frankly, just anything in leather. Do you have a leather-bound book which I can have, please? And so, yeah, okay. Thankfully, didn't press the silent alarm and went, and it was, yeah, okay, we've got this. It was like, okay, yeah, black leather-bound, great. It's like, what are you? What is this for exactly? I think not thinking I was having some sort of like Damascene conversion or whatever. So I was like, it's for a video, for a film project. I was like, okay, well, what kind? It's like, is it like a library scene? I was like, it's a religion thing. I was like, it was just very, very, very helpful. So okay, yeah, cool. Got this. Very, very best of luck in your video. Just me walking out like a gremlin, like we're gonna tear this one up.
So how much convincing did Amy take to play her part? Like, I'm going to be a possessed what? No,
absolute professional. Professional. Yeah.
It was quite like all those chains, and it was like we felt quite bad. It's like, oh, this is, and actually the Sean and her are partners in life as well, so it was all a bit. She was like an absolute pro. She was saying, no, we're doing this, we're doing it, do it again, and she was just like, yeah, I mean, the band shots actually were done fairly quickly, and then we spent a lot of time on her shots, and she was like really game for it, so yes, she was absolutely fantastic, really good. To answer your other question, by the way, yes, we are thinking about doing potentially another video, probably with Phil again, because it worked out so well. Because the thing is, the reality is, touring may not be happening again or not at least the kind of touring we'd want to do.
Yeah.
So might as well just plug in some more videos, really.
Yeah.
That's the trick.
I'll come into talking about the gigs in a wee second here, but carrying on with the visual side of the album, I noticed that you used Alex Tarsis for the cover again. So was this an easy decision to make when discussing the cover for the album? Just to go back to him.
Yeah. I mean, actually, when I spoke to Kunal, I mean, I'm sure you've noticed that Kunal's using a lot of Marian Lewandowski for his artwork. I mean, he's using a lot of those. So he did sort of suggest, and we all said, you know what, we do like what Alex does, especially because we know obviously he'd done the Blinding Light of Faith, but then one of the other bands on the roster that we not as brutal as them, but Depravity is obviously the other band that's on the roster with that Alex that works with as well. And we feel musically and visually we're probably more on the Depravity side than we are on some of the other bands that have been using Marion. So we decided to go more on that sort of, more on that side, and the artwork on this one. I mean, I love the Blinding Light of Faith, but this particular one is probably my favorite. I mean, we are probably going to rattle a few cages out there. But
so what do you give him then to work on? Do you give him the songs, the lyrics? Do you give him everything, or do you just say, this is what I've got in my head, just roll with it, and this is the title of the album, just roll with it, do what you want?
We'll send it. Well, I mean, Craig handles this a lot, but we'll send him, like, the planned artwork and like the lyrics. But a lot of it is, I mean, and we'll have like a certain concept. Sometimes like Craig will drop a sketch, but really, again, coming back to like, the way that we outsource stuff, we work with people because we trust in their vision. And the vision on that guy gives me nightmares. I will always remember when we were doing the Blinding Light of Faith artwork, that he would message back, well, spit more, just kind of, shooting back and forth ideas. And then he came back at one point and was like, okay, so here's the idea I have, right? So there was going to be this man in the center. There's going to be nails in his eyes. These religious texts are going to be attached, fused to his skin. These just given this pure hellscape that he was just outlining, and let's figure it out just as nonchalantly as like someone, just saying what they're ordering for their groceries that evening. And it was like, oh, what? Okay. This is what it's going to look like. It's it's nice. It actually made me feel like when I was, like when I was a kid, and actually hearing about, like, back, in a more innocent time, someone go, oh, have you heard of that band Cannibal Corpse? Have you heard what the album cover is?
The words right out my mouth there.
Yeah, a lady with a traffic cone stuck through her nostril, or something, and you go, oh, wow, a whole traffic cone. It was that same sort of like that the image is freaking me out.
I think Shoi, he's the one that's got the mental head, like traffic cone up your nose, right? Okay.
If Cannibal Corpse are listening, all I'm saying is it's an unexplored.
You've copyrighted it. Yeah. But we kind of touched on it a wee second ago there, like gigs. Obviously, it's looking like we're not going to be able to tour the world with this, or maybe not even Europe. But what things like Bloodstock showed last year was that the UK scene is extremely strong, and the gigs that I've been to up in Glasgow, for example, they've been extremely well attended, and I've been to Manchester as well, extremely well attended, because I think punters are just craving for gigs. But the problem for you guys is everybody and their uncles want to go out and play now, so you have to find a gap. You have to pick and choose when it is that you're going to play. But is there anything gig wise that you can tell us, or have you got things in the pipeline?
So we have a couple of shows. We have the Cardiff Death Fest in June, and then we have the festival in Plymouth in September, if I'm correct. So we've got these two. Gig-wise, I mean, it's very simple. And I touched on that earlier. I mean, we've played a lot in the UK. I mean, we've done a lot of UK and all that. And the UK is a bit of a hit and miss, always, especially for us. It's always been a bit. I mean, I always find playing in your home country is always a bit of a weird one, because there's always a lot of band promoter politics that's involved and all that kind of shit that I can't be, involved in. And we made a decision. Actually, Paul made it for us. He said, look, can we not do shows we're on the way home, we feel like retiring. And that really, you know, because I was like, I don't want to be doing shows like that. So we're going to be very picky with the kind of shows we will do.
Yeah.
You know, when Cardiff Gavin approached us for the Cardiff Death Fest, we said yes straight away because we know it's basically part of the same Death Fest franchise that's all over the world, really. So we said, yeah, absolutely, we'll do that. And the Plymouth show, which is our friend Dan Tregenna putting it on. Again, it was a straight yes because the bill is great. You know, it's Desecration, Like a Coffee, it's us. It's brilliant. It's a great bill. So I've
gigged a lot with Dan, and he is like without any question, like in the whole underground scene, like the most like sort of pro like sort of gig organizer in a place like Plymouth to actually put together like an extreme metal scene. It really, you know, it takes a lot of conviction to do that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would like to do, and actually we are sort of doing that with Monument of Misanthropy, where we actually taking another Transcending band and doing a UK tour in May. I'd like to be able to do that. We've talked to Kunal about this as well. I think is to actually start putting little underground tours with Transcending bands as well, because
exactly.
Again, there's no bands out there. And like I said, going back to that whole business thing, I just, you know, like I said, the touring agencies, booking agencies don't want to look at any of those bands because they're not on Century or Nuclear Blast or one of those. So actually, that'd be pretty cool. And I actually do believe that a lot of those tours, you know, and this is probably the piece of advice I can give to younger bands. It's great to do the kind of tours we've done. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, doing the sort of big tour bus tours that we've done over the years, I'll do it again.
Yeah.
The thing is, I've always said that you've got to try to also do the other end, which is try to do more underground tours as well. Because I think the thing is that the difference between those big tours versus the underground tour, the crowd is very different.
Yeah.
And you genuinely will have people that will come and buy merch in those underground tours, because what happens with the big tours is by the time people have blown their money, I'll give you an example. I remember when we played with Marduk in 2012. I'll never forget this. I was at the merch stand with Aaron, and this guy just came in, went to the merch stand, and there was about 5 or 6 designs of shirts of Marduk. He literally bought everything.
Wow.
But then he obviously wasn't going to buy anything from any other bands, and you get that a lot. Like, you know, I don't like to do, for instance, tours. Like, I know there was a tour recently we were approached for, which was Nile. If I remember, was it Nile and who else, Paul? I can't remember. It was Nile and another big band. It was 2 big bands. It was Nile and no, it was Vader.
Hate Eternal.
Was it Hate Eternal and Vader or something like that? And I pretty much said no, because I knew no one's going to be interested in the Profundis. No one's going to buy the merch, because if you got 2 heavyweights there, people are just going to go and buy the merch for that. But if you're playing an underground show, and if you do, let's say, 3 Transcending bands, I can guarantee you every night, if there's enough crowd, all the merch will go from all the bands, not just the headlining bands, but all the bands, because it's a different kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And I'd like to do that kind of stuff. You know, I think it's just more fun. And with the kind of music we do, you know, you want smaller clubs and all that. It's your big venues. It's a bit, you know. I remember seeing Cannibal Corpse in a big venue, and I love Cannibal Corpse. I saw them at the Forum. I thought they were awful. You know, it just wasn't their thing. You could tell that they were awkward. They felt awkward in a place where they're about 10 meters away from the crowd, and so I think that's the gigging wise. Definitely, we're going to try to be a lot more selective.
Yeah. Well, listen, we've only got 7 minutes left. Again, you guys are brilliant at answering questions, and I've actually skipped a few, but I have to go to the most important question. What was the guitars that you used for the recording of the album then? So, Shoi, I'm looking at you, so we may as well start with you. What guitars did you use, mate, and what's your setup, your pedals and things like that?
It's actually fairly simple, so I could actually show you a couple of them here. So I basically use. I'll just get it here so you can see it.
He had that pre-planned, Paul, didn't he? He had that planned.
The handy thing is, we actually use a lot of the same guitars on this album. So
yeah, for the lead sound, lead and some of the rhythms we use this ESP. This is the ESP Horizon. We've got also a couple of an Ibanez as well. I think your Ibanez is here, Paul, right? Did you use it?
Yeah. That one's there. They already Grab
that.
Let's see if he recognizes which one's mine.
Yeah, the one that's bashed around a lot.
Yeah, that's my gauntlet marks from the former Carriers days. That's what that is.
So we use this Ibanez. I've got another Ibanez, a V-shaped one. We use that. And in terms of actually sound setup, it's fairly simple. We both use Kempers. So everything was done with the Kemper. There was a plan potentially to reamp some of the stuff, but we didn't really do that because we didn't need to. The Kempers sounded great. The sound that we had from the Kempers, we used like, one of them was we basically modified the sound that Hour of Penance used on their album. So it was effectively a profile of an angle mainly. So the main guitars, rhythm guitar. So we tend to double track, each of us double track guitars. So
the second one though, we had that, but then we doubled that up with a like a profile of like a crank amp with like a HM2 running through it. So you basically had like the fuller sort of death metal kind of warmer kind of tone with that sort of that grindy dismember tone. I mean, I'm one of these. I mean, I think that sometimes I hear that and it kind of gets a little bit abused a little bit. But we wanted to kind of get a balance where we had like that ridiculous bite which that sound has, but with the same just that massive body of a lot of the the more like angle kind of sound.
Like Craig had a very particular vision for the guitars, and he's been saying that for a while. That I just want that kind of a sound, and it is very much that he wanted the sort of the balls of the guitars, but he also wanted that bite, that and he was really trying to find the right balance, and then obviously try to find the space for the bass in there as well. But I think we got it on this one. It's cool. From a production point of view.
Balls and bite sounds like an AC/DC album.
That's it. Well, I was going to say like you can't be called a tech death band because you've only got 6 strings on your guitar. So I
got an 8 string as one of my like lockdown purchases. So I don't know. I think that no, these guys would like literally string me up. It's not happening.
Well, listen, guys.
It's a funny one about the tech death thing, because to be honest, I'd be lying if I didn't say that we didn't chase that at one point, but we thought we should be part of the tech death scene. Because they were, but then we realized the more I listened to it, and the more, especially Paul and I, the more we listened to it, the more we realized I really don't want to be playing that kind of stuff. I find tech death to be an incredibly boring genre, really, because all the bands start sounding the same. It's all becomes, the songs are not really there. I mean, I know it's very successful. There are some very successful bands in there, and people love it because I always sort of look at tech death, and I know it sounds a bit harsh to say that, but to me, tech death is like looking at a movie with loads of special effects, but not enough story. It's all fireworks, but do we have enough story? Is there enough, like songs in there, things to go back to? Because I notice a lot of the tech death fans, they've got this insatiable appetite. It's like they literally want a new album of somebody every week. And every week an album comes out, and that's the album of the year. Then the next one comes out, that's the album of the year. And it's just like, well, hang on, and it's partly because the sound is always very similar.
I hear exactly what you're saying. They've got to play a riff at 1,000 miles an hour and stuff like that and try and outrace everybody. But listen, unfortunately, we really are running out of time. But I have to just thank you so much for this interview. I will be continuing to play Religious Cancer on Moshville Radio. I'll do my bit on Moshville Times as well. I'll share this interview on my YouTube channel, Moshville Times YouTube channel, and Facebook groups and everything like that. Twitter, whatever. We will do our bit to promote Profundis because you guys are definitely worth promoting. So
thank you. Thank you so much. And again, like as I said earlier, like really, it takes this for like a grassroots scene like this. It's a labor of love, and we need more people like you because it's not something where there's some executive who's gonna make it happen. It's a community, and so it means so much that there are people like you actually making this happen, because it can't just be left to us.
Do you know what I found? Like I've interviewed bands in Sweden and Greece and Mexico and everything like that. Nobody said no. Do you know why? Because they're music fans themselves, and all they want to do is just talk about music. And long may that continue. I'm not going to stop with this. You guys are not going to stop what you're doing. So this will not be the last time that we'll talk. So thank you very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Take care.
Also, right, see you in Glasgow at some point as well.
You certainly shall. You certainly shall.